This is breaking news from the Las Vegas Review-Journal, sponsored by Michael Gaughan's South Point Hotel, Casino, and Spa.
Welcome back, everyone, inside of the Las Vegas Review-Journal studios. Your Vegas Nation host, Cassie Soto here. Day 2 of the 2023 NFL Draft has come to an end, and the Raiders have added 3 more players to their roster. Let's go ahead and recap Day 2 here, looking at this graphic that we've got. With that number 35 pick, the Raiders traded up from 38 to 35 to go ahead and get Michael Mayer, a tight end. Then at number 70, they went ahead and picked up Byron Young, some defense there. And then number 100, rounding out the draft for the Raiders of Day 2, is Trey Tucker, wide receiver. Joining me in studio is Adam Hill. Adam, how do you think the Raiders fared here after Day 2?
I mean, very interesting. Obviously, going with the tight end, I think that was a position not a lot of people thought they needed, but Michael Mayer, a very, very intriguing prospect. So I think the Raiders just identified somebody that said that guy can help us out down the road. A little bit interesting on some of the other picks, maybe some guys that you would consider reaches, I guess, if you want to categorize them in that way. But the Raiders are trying to address some needs. I know wide receiver is not really a need, but they brought some speed in. He can really fly. He can probably return some kicks for them as well. That will be how he's utilized. I know they've got a lot of guys in the slot. They already had Hunter Renfrow. They brought in Jacoby Myers, but look, you can never have too much speed at wide receiver, and I think that's part of the philosophy for the Raiders here. And
right now we're, of course, waiting to hear from Raiders brass to go ahead and recap Day 2. So as soon as we get some movement in Henderson, Nevada, we'll go ahead and toss out live to that press conference. But looking at that tight end, Raiders fans might have been able to get a preview of Michael Mayer if they went ahead and went to the Shamrock Series when Notre Dame was here. Was that in October, I believe?
Yeah, they played BYU at Allegiant Stadium. A huge crowd was out there to see that game. I was out there, and look, Michael Mayer stood out on the field. There's no question about it. If you were at that game, you remember Michael Mayer from that game. He was wide open on just about every play. Notre Dame went to him very often, and he almost every single time the ball was thrown to him, caught the ball and then made something happen with it down the field. Broke some tackles, jumped some guys. He was hurdling all over the place, diving into the end zone. Just a guy that makes plays. And it wasn't an anomaly. That's pretty much what he did in every single game that he played in. The guy was wide open, and he's a great player. And I think that's what the Raiders expect him to do. He's probably got some time to develop because obviously they have Austin Hooper and O.J. Howard, who they just brought in after trading Darren Waller. So they can be the starters. He can develop behind them, but I think he's going to be on the field quite a bit this year even because he can make things happen when he's out there.
Well, how about Byron Young there at number 70? Again, adding some defensive help. There was 2 Byron Youngs.
There is.
They went with the Alabama guy, right?
Yeah, and I was all prepared to talk about the Tennessee guy because he has a great backstory. Instead, they go Alabama. The Tennessee Byron Young, much more of a prospect, a guy who has, as I said, kind of an entertaining history where he kind of didn't play football for a while. But the Alabama Byron Young is a guy who was very productive. He doesn't really project necessarily as one of those toolsy guys who can, really, has a high ceiling at the next level. But I think very high floor. I think he's going to be a very good player, a guy that you can put on the field. You can trust him. He's going to make plays. Probably not going to be like a game-changing type player, but I think you just put him on the field and can trust him. And I think those are the kind of guys that this defense needs. Certainly need to bring in those explosive type athletes. Hint, Tyree Wilson, like they did in the first round. But he's a very high-risk, high-reward type player. While you get now on the second day, a defensive tackle who can play a little bit of defensive end as well, really play all over the defensive line. First and second down, he can get to the quarterback, really, really solid against the run as well. So a guy you can trust, and then a couple of home run swings with some other players, which is what you can do when you have 12 picks, now 11 in the draft because they traded up. When you have the luxury of that many picks, there's a lot of things that you can do, and I think the Raiders are just kind of stockpiling talent all over the field right now.
And how do you think, obviously we got a sneak peek into the war room, right? Now Josh McDaniels and Dave Ziegler have had more time. This is really their first real draft, right? Coming in with a full year to prepare and come in again. How do you think that they're feeling after Day 2?
Well, look, anytime you have a draft, if you're a NFL team, you believe you had a great draft because you're picking the guys that you want to pick, right? I mean, that you're going to come out saying, hey, we did a great job. This is what we like. But I think you can see the plan a little bit. And as you mentioned, yes, they had a draft last year, but they came in late to the process. Really, when they had the draft last year, they were still trying to figure out who were their guys? Who are the guys that are on their roster? What do they need? Where do they need an infusion of talent? All of those things were still going on. That process was still happening. And you heard from Champ Kelly and Dave Ziegler last night, probably hear from them again a little bit as well, where they said, look, it's a year-long process. Like, we started analyzing these players a year ago, and now it's just coming to fruition. Now it's just paying off. So a very different draft this year where they had a lot more resources. First of all, they didn't have a first and second round pick last year, and they had the time that they needed to learn their roster, learn what they needed, learn where they needed, to get a boost in talent, a boost in energy, and just depth. And they're figuring that out right now, and you're seeing that plan come to fruition.
Right. Well, let's talk about a guy that's on the roster right now. This was some news that happened right as the draft was getting started, Adam, that the Raiders had restructured Chandler Jones' contract, creating about $5 million in cap space. Can you just kind of take us through that? What does that mean? What does that do for this team moving forward?
Look, if we had 18 hours on this, we couldn't really explain the salary cap and some of the changes that go on. A lot of these deals, and certainly the Chandler Jones deal that he signed, where he's here with the Raiders, you've got a lot of moving pieces. You can move bonuses around. You can move different incentive clauses around. You can move a lot of things around and create space. So you see, teams that are like, hey, how are they signing all these players? Isn't there a salary cap? Yeah, you can move money down the road. Patrick Mahomes signed the big deal with the Chiefs, but they're moving it down the road every single year. They're kind of kicking the can down the road a little bit, and those bills aren't going to come due until a little bit later. In this case, the Raiders are saying, all right, let's create a little bit of space. Let's spread this money out, and let's, maybe find room for Josh Jacobs to sign a deal. You don't know exactly what they're going to do with some of that money, but they're also going to have draft picks to sign at some point. They're going to create some space. We know that there's some offensive linemen out there potentially that they could sign as well, but you need the space to do that. So there's always kind of flexibility with the cap. In this case, they looked at his contract. They said, look, you can help us out here. We can get some more guys. We can build to the roster. If you just kind of stretch some things out, move some things around, we're going to still owe you the same amount of money, but let's spread it out a little bit, and that's what the Raiders did to create that space for themselves.
Right, and then when you've got a guy like Tyree Wilson coming in, hopefully, he'll learn the ropes and maybe can get his way in there. And, of course, General Manager Dave Ziegler said that, hey, he still has to earn his role, regardless if we picked him number 7 overall. We've seen before, even if you're a first-round pick, it doesn't necessarily mean you are a starter.
For sure. And look, in his case, yes, I think a lot of people looked at it and said, wow, edge rusher, you already have Chandler Jones. You certainly already have Max Crosby there. You need you have Malcolm Kuntz still who's trying to, work his way up. But you need depth there. You need a lot of different guys, and Chandler Jones isn't going to be around forever. I don't think a lot of people think he's going to play after this year for the Raiders. So you need to develop him, and you get that year to sit behind some of the better, more experienced, knowledgeable players in the league and learn that position. So I think that's the plan with him, but certainly he's going to be counted on quite a bit this year. When you are drafted that high, look, we hear what Dave Ziegler said. You're not guaranteed anything, but you're guaranteed at least a shot. You're going to get out on the field because, look, they don't want to look bad and say, look, we took this guy that we can't put out on the field, and you expect him to be able to contribute right away. So we'll see him play, I think, quite a bit this year, kind of rotate in. And Chandler Jones was the comparison for Tyree Wilson before he even came to the Raiders. That was the guy you looked at and said, this kind of length, this kind of athleticism, who does he project as? It's Chandler Jones, and I know some Raiders fans might cringe and say, well, Chandler Jones,
Which
not
Chandler
that
Jones,
great.
Adam? Which Chandler Jones?
The Chandler Jones from last year, probably not the one you want Tyree Wilson to remind you of, but the Chandler Jones who's going to be in the Hall of Fame, that is a guy I think a lot of people would be very excited if Tyree Wilson pans out like.
Well, earlier today, we were able to hear from Tyree Wilson. They shipped him into Las Vegas already earlier this morning.
It's unfortunate. We had the same outfit on today, so it was kind of, I had to change.
Yeah,
of
course. You couldn't steal his fit.
Yeah.
But let's go ahead and hear what he had to say earlier this afternoon.
There's 2 other great pass rushers, Max and Chandler, and, I would want to come there and, learn from the best and, take my game to another level. Really just fitting in wherever they need me and, helping out and then, be able to give breaks whenever I can. Raiders are tough, smart, and dependable, so I feel like I bring that and, a versatile player to be able to play anywhere in the defense. Goals, first, to help the defense as any way possible and, win as many games as we can and hopefully get to a Super Bowl in Vegas. I like doing those long arm pass rush moves, be able to use my long arms and, be able to compress the pocket and also have counters off of it and also, reaching on the quarterback to create turnovers to give the ball back to the offense. Honestly, I want to be different than other pass rushers in the NFL. I want to have my own ideal pass rush plan and, for other people to, take bits and pieces from my game. well, I always see myself, in the NFL. It just hasn't really, just settled in yet. I feel like maybe in the next 24 hours it'll finally settle in, and, I'll be getting to work and help Raider Nation.
All right, the day one fit with the flowers, that was great. But this one, like, truly silver and black ready.
Yeah, for sure. And look, I think one of the key things with draft picks, you always see these great fits on draft night. You got to walk the red carpet. You got to walk out there on stage. It's that second day. Like, you're going to have to do more interviews. You're going to have to be on stage. You have to have a second day ready.
Right.
Last year, Malik Willis was here. I'm thinking back to that one. He only had one suit, didn't get picked in the first round, had to go shopping, get a second suit, and then probably a third outfit for the next day. But I mean, to come back with that's strong. I think he's ready. I think he's ready for Vegas. That's what a lot of people are saying today. Like, the guy understands, and I know Champ Kelly actually joked about it last night and said he's Vegas ready with his outfits. We saw it today. I think he's good to go.
You think him and Jimmy G will go on a shopping spree together? I feel like those might be the new two suit guys here
I feel
in
like
Vegas.
they have very different styles, though.
Yeah.
Like, I think they could probably talk about it. They could discuss it. They could probably give each other advice on it, but I don't think they're wearing the same clothes. I think they're going to be in different stores, probably.
Right. Well, let's go back to this Michael Mayer video that we have again from that Shamrock series. If you're joining us now, we're just waiting for Raiders GM Dave Ziegler and probably assistant GM again, Champ Kelly, to join us here live. But we have video of Michael Mayer from that Shamrock series where he was playing here at Allegiant Stadium. So Allegiant Stadium won't be new to him. Yeah. Adam, take us through this game. Again, you said you were there. What did you see from this number 35 pick here for the Las Vegas Raiders?
Well, pretty much this. Like, this is a highlight film, obviously, of just his best plays.
Look at that hurdle.
But it's essentially what you saw in every single play. The guy was all over the field. BYU couldn't stop him. He was wide open. Even the plays that didn't go to him, although we would just see right there, not even wide open. Doesn't matter. He can still catch it. But even the plays we didn't throw to him, like, you can't throw to a guy every single play. But look at the separation there, the push, the uses athleticism and his size to get away, and then makes a nice dive into the end zone to make the catch. His hands are incredible, gets wide open. He's actually much better as a run blocker than you would expect out of a guy with that elite of receiving skills. I just think he's a guy that the Raiders obviously coveted. They saw what they wanted. They traded up 3 spots to get him. You don't usually do that for a tight end, but at that spot in the draft, they have plenty of capital. They were able to do it, and I think this is a guy that you expected to go. I think in our mock he was around 22, 23. I think most he was around the same place, even late teens in the draft. So when you're there in the second round, you've got all these extra picks. You can use those picks to move around, and they did that. They identified a guy that they really wanted, and in that game, I mean, you see the highlights of what he's doing, but again, it was 11 catches, 118 yards, and 2 touchdowns in that 28-20 victory. That's just what he did. I mean, every single play you just saw him out there, and I think if they could have thrown it to him 50 times, he probably would have had like 46 catches in that game. It was nuts, and I think the fans saw him that day. They got to see, even if you don't watch much college football, maybe you were out there at Allegiant Stadium, you saw it. He actually said that it would have been his first time in Vegas, but he came and did a promo shoot in Vegas before that for the Shamrock Series game. So a second time that he was out here, and I think Raiders fans are really going to like him. And again, unlike with Tyree Wilson, who said he's going to be forced into action a little bit with just by nature of being a first-round pick and the fact that you need pass rushers, Michael Mayer is going to have some time. Now they're going to use him. He'll be out there because he is such a weapon. They're going to want to get him involved, but there's no pressure. I mean, Austin Hooper and O.J. Howard, very, very good players, veteran players that they can get good use out of. He'll learn a lot from them. I know Austin Hooper is a guy that he can certainly learn a lot from, and they'll kind of figure it out together and go along, and there will be no pressure for him to take the field week 1, but I think the Raiders are going to want to get him out there just because of all the elite skills that he has.
Right, and before we get off of Michael Mayer, we just have to give a shout out to our sports multimedia journalist Leandre Fox for getting that video and saying, hey, I think I have some cool video of this guy, and sure enough, we were blessed with that. So great stuff, Leandre Fox, if you can hear me out there. Great stuff out there. Once again, if you're joining us live, we're just waiting to hear from Raiders General Manager Dave Ziegler and Assistant GM Champ Kelly. They'll recap day 2 for us, but if we're looking right here, just again, the Raiders draft picks so far, Adam. Number 7, Tyree Wilson. Number 35, Michael Mayer, with that great video from Leandre Fox. Number 70, Byron Young, and then number 100, Trey Tucker. That last one in there, the draft, of course, ended today with pick 102. So if you were able to dive into Trey Tucker already, Adam, what were we able to find out about Trey so far coming out of Cincinnati?
He's very fast. I mean, that's the first thing you're going to notice about him. And look, let's be honest, that's why he was drafted. I mean, I think the Raiders looked at what they saw out of him. The game film is okay. It's pretty good. He's a playmaker. The projectables out there, the measurables, I mean, doesn't have the longest of arms. there's not a whole lot that you would look at like from a combine perspective and say, or his pro day and say, oh, this is a guy that translates, except that speed. And I think that speed is what the Raiders really like about him. You bring him in, like I said, he can return some kicks as well. There's a lot that he's going to be able to do, but really it's that speed, and can that translate? He's a guy that really he's kind of a swing. For like a home run swing here. You're looking for somebody that is just going to develop at a much higher level than you anticipate. And again, we go back to the amount of picks that they were able to stockpile. That's what you can do. Like, you can move around, you can target specific players, but you can also take some chances, because this is a guy that I don't think a lot of people say is a home run guarantee to be a successful player at the next level. He's got the skills in terms of the speed to potentially figure it out and really be a lot better than people expect. But on the surface, you say, he just kind of is what he is, but that speed is a game changer. And that's kind of what you look at and say, all right, you can take a shot at him because he's got the speed. It may translate. It may work out. He may be a lot better. You think of, he's not quite as small, but think of like what Tyreek Hill does, and just say he can just change games with how fast he can move around the field. Tyreek Hill, better athlete overall. But I just think that this is kind of an exciting pick for the Raiders to say, look, we don't need a receiver. Got a ton of them on the roster. But you need that really, really dynamic speed guy, and that's what you get here.
Yeah, and so 7 picks left, of course. The Raiders did trade that 141 pick to move up to that 35 spot. So again, let's just look at tomorrow. Let's preview tomorrow with those 7 picks. Do they package those up a little bit? Do they go for all 7? What do you think the Raiders do? And again, what sort of just area do they attack tomorrow now that they have that free wiggle room? Because obviously we've seen before in that round 4, you can get some studs. So you really do want to do your, obviously, due diligence here and to be able to find guys that can make an impact on this team.
Yeah, no question. And I think you look at specific areas that are out on the field, and one, we have not seen them really address that offensive line. That's not something that's happened. That's something they're going to need to do at some point. I don't know that they're going to use all 7 picks tomorrow. Again, they can use those to kind of target specific guys. If you get to a point in the draft and you say, hey, we're 7 spots away, we don't want somebody to take our guy, you can use those picks to trade up and just target. That's what they did with Michael Mayer. So you might do that as well. But there are areas, like we said, offensive line. They haven't gone there yet. They need more depth. I think that they didn't need it as badly as a lot of people thought, because last year, the second half of the season, the offensive line really emerged as an offensive line that was good. It wasn't a disaster like a lot of people thought. It wasn't the negative, the most negative part of the team. It was fine. And so I think you can go back into the year with that same group, but you need to get some depth. You need to get more guys that are developing for down the road. So I do expect them to go offensive line at some point, and cornerback for sure. Like, this is a position we thought they might go in the first round. Devin Witherspoon wasn't there to draft him in the first round, so they had to go another direction. I still think they would have taken him if he was on the board, but he wasn't. So cornerback is still an area of need for this team. And then just keep stockpiling on the defensive line. And I think there was a couple linebackers they would have gone for if they were on the board here as well, and they weren't. That's another area. Just look offensive line and just add playmakers on defense. As many playmakers as you can find. You need them on all 3 levels of the defense. You need them all over the defense. Just keep addressing that. Find guys that can make plays on the defensive side, because that's what you've lacked for the last couple of years. That's what's going to make you a contender in the AFC West.
Yeah, we'll go ahead and look at that draft order again tomorrow. The Raiders, again, starting pretty early in the day with that 109th pick, right? We ended at 102 today. Then they move on to 144, 174, 204, 214, 220, and 231. And it's just like boom, boom, boom tomorrow. So how, ready do they need to be? Right? Do they have a bunch of names and they're just pulling them off as they go? Or what do you think is going on there tomorrow afternoon for the?
They're going to need to be ready, and we're going to all need to be ready. From 204 to 220, it's going to be like every 30 seconds. It feels like that the Raiders are on the clock. But look, I think all the work is basically done. Now, all the plans change. The famous everybody has a plan until they get punched in the face. I think that was Mike Tyson that said that first.
Yep.
Like, everybody has the plan. You have your draft board. You're ready to go. Hey, these are the guys we like. This is the order that we like them in. And then all of a sudden, things change. I mean, you talk about another guy like Darnell Washington today, a local product who thought he was going to go in the first round. A lot of people mocked him to go in the first round, and he's all the way down at the bottom of the 3rd round. Like, those are the kind of things that could change your plans. We saw a couple teams change their plans today and have to move up and trade. So you've got your board. You say, all right, this is the area that these guys are going to fall in. This is, when you're looking at pick 204, let's say, these are like the 15 guys that are probably going to be there at 204. And all of a sudden you get there and there's some people that you didn't think had any chance of falling to you that you have to then adjust and say, oh, maybe we like this. So you reevaluate your plan. But there's not enough time to do that. We saw, I mean, tonight as we're watching along, it's 5 minutes, it's 5 minutes, it's 5 minutes, and not every team uses all their 5 minutes. So all of a sudden you're thinking, all right, we got 4 picks left. That's about 20 minutes. Let's decide who we're getting. Oh, wait, we're going right now? We have to just take the top guy on the board. So there's not time to sit there. And, I've referenced the movie Draft Day the last couple of days, one of my favorite movies. I love it. It's fantastic. But, they're sitting in there and they're having these long conversations as they're on the clock. There's not time for that. It's very, very quick to just kind of go, all right, do we like him? Is there any problems that we have with him? We didn't expect he was going to be there for us. Can we all get behind this pick? Can we make this pick? Those conversations have to be had before you're on the clock. They're going on right now. I mean, last night when we talked to David Champ, you watched here, they were saying, hey, we're going to go rest. Let's shut it down for tonight. Let's get back in the morning and let's reassess where our draft board is. So that's what it's going to be. It's going to be all that work you've done over the last year, especially these last 2 months, to have your draft board ready. You're not going to make drastic changes. You're not going to go and say, maybe we were wrong about this guy. Let's move this bottom guy all the way up to the top.
Maybe we picked the wrong Byron Young. Oh, no.
There is 2 Byron Youngs, which is fantastic. It's still one of my favorite
Same
stories
position, also. It threw
draft.
me off when I was grabbing pictures of him.
So just the backstory, we were so prepped on Byron Young, and I was so excited about his story, and I heard the Raiders were taking him, and let's go. And they took the other Byron Young. Of course, maybe they will take the other. Maybe that happens. I think that would be a very fun story to write.
I mean, I did ask you, what if they did mean the Tennessee Byron Young? Do they just say, never mind, or they just go for it?
Those things can happen.
Right.
I don't think it happened in this case. I think the Raiders took the Byron Young they expected, but those things can definitely happen. This is a communication thing where you gotta tell who you want, you gotta call in the pick, you gotta type it in, all those other things, and it can happen. I don't think it happened here.
No,
Let's be clear that I don't think that that's what happened. But look, even on the other side, we've seen teams not make their pick in the 5 minutes, and other teams jump up and make picks in front of them. Mm-hmm. It's the wild, wild west out there. As much as it seems organized on TV and everything's going on, there's a lot of chaos happening behind the scenes. I don't think they took the wrong one, but I would love if they took both Byron Youngs.
Well, that would be very confusing for us.
It would, but fun.
Okay.
Fun is more important than confusing.
That's true. That's true. Well, both Hendon Hooker and Will Levis were both on the board today, Adam, and those were players that Dave Ziegler was asked about, and he said he obviously didn't give a very long answer, but he said, yeah, we like them. Are you surprised they didn't make a move there, or they knew right away we're set with Jimmy G for now, we'll wait a little bit?
So I do think that they still liked Hendon Hooker. I think even a little bit more than Will Levis. But sometimes if you read a transcript or you see what's written, it's kind of different than being there. And I thought last night, and I did a couple interviews this morning, and people said, do they like these guys? And I said, I thought they did going in, and I thought they liked Hendon Hooker more than they liked Will Levis. But if you really listen to the kind of the tone of Dave Ziegler last night, when he was asked about these players being available, he said, yeah, they're good.
All right.
So in print, you look and say, oh, they're good. Okay, what does that mean? But if you listen, I don't think there was that level of excitement. I don't think anybody in that building had a huge level of excitement over either of those players. And again, when we talk about the plans changing, say you're on the clock in the 4th round, you're on the clock tomorrow, and you see those guys there, that does change your opinion. That does change, hey, maybe we didn't love him, but why not take a shot at him, see if he works out? But I think there was a couple of concerns about Hendon Hooker, especially going in. Will Levis is a guy who last year was fantastic. He had all this great talent around him. He was really good. The tape this year was not good. There was some bad stuff on film this year. Now you say he was injured most of the year. He tried to battle through it, which you like, but he didn't have a whole lot of talent around him, and it showed out on the field. He couldn't elevate the level of those other guys on his team, and he's playing in the SEC. It's very, very difficult. On the other side, you had a guy in Hendon Hooker whose film was tremendous. The guy was awesome. He was always finding open guys downfield, hitting the right guy. So smart in where to go with the ball, always making the right read, never turning the ball over, and putting up big, big numbers. But the question was a couple of things. One, the offense he played in, which called for a lot of first read, guys open off the line, go to him, throw him the ball, make the play. Not a whole lot out of the structure of the offense out of Hendon Hooker. And the other parts were, he's an old man. I mean, he's not old.
Okay,
but he's
25. Relax. My hip broke as you said that.
For a draft pick, he's an old man. 25 years old, which I would think you would say a lot of maturity there for sure. But look, if you're drafting a guy, if you think about it, he's not just older for a prospect at 25. He also is coming off the torn ACL. Now, if you're 22 and have a torn ACL, all right, now you have a season to kind of work your way back in. Now you're 23, you're 24. Now you're trying to find your prime. If it takes you a season to get into the mix after a torn ACL at 25. Now you're 26, potentially 27. Now you're looking at it and saying, okay, how much of a prime does this guy have? If you do hit on a quarterback, which you want to do, you want to be there for 7, 8, 9, 10 years. I mean, look at Tom Brady was with the Patriots almost 20 years. Not that, you expect a guy to do that, but you want a guy to be around for like a decade. And now all of a sudden you're talking about a guy in his mid-30s. That's not what you want out of a draft pick necessarily. Now, if you told them, hey, he's going to play for 10 years, he's going to be great, I think that changes it. Right. But the chances go down of something like that happening when you're taking an older guy coming off a knee injury. So I think there was a lot to really, really like about Hendon Hooker, but you also understand what some teams saw when they said, maybe this isn't the right guy for us. He finally goes off the board to the Lions, who, by the way, credit to the Lions because I tweeted about how bad their first round was, and it was bad. It was awful. They resurrected a little bit. They had a lot of draft picks like the Raiders do. They figured out a way to turn those draft picks into some pretty quality players over the last couple of hours after just a disastrous. I mean, we can't stress enough how bad their first round was, but they figured it out. And I think as a whole, you look at the Lions and you say, hey, good job by them. They did some good work.
I'm just going to go out on a limb and say that Dave Ziegler saw the mayo and coffee video of Will Levis and was like, I'm out.
You wouldn't do it?
No.
If he would have been drafted, would you have done it on our live stream here just to say, hey, look, this is what he did, this is what we're going to do, drop the mayo into the coffee?
I've always wanted, and I've pitched this to the bosses before, so bosses, if you're listening, to do a Coffee with Cass segment.
Okay.
So if I got the Coffee with Cass segment and Will Levis was my first guest, I would.
You would?
Why not?
Mayonnaise is objectively awful. But I feel like it disintegrates in the coffee. I think it'd be okay.
It's such a strong flavor, though. I don't know.
I'm out.
Yeah, no, we're not about it. So again, if you're joining us, we're not just here talking about coffee and mayo. We're waiting We're waiting for General Manager Dave Ziegler and Assistant GM Champ Kelly to join us here to discuss their day 2 picks, which again, we'll go ahead and recap those day 2 picks. Yesterday, of course, with that number 7 overall pick, Tyree Wilson, but today the Raiders kicked things off with number 35, Michael Mayer, number 70, Byron Young, and number 100 rounding out day 2, Trey Tucker, wide receiver. So again, just sort of adding, a couple offense, couple defense there. And as you say, there's a lot of spaces, a lot of areas of need that the Raiders do still need to fulfill. But I think, if you're a player on this Raiders roster right now, if you're Max Crosby or a Chandler Jones, what are you thinking right now? Obviously, Max Crosby reached out yesterday to Tyree Wilson and said, let's go, let's get to work. They met at the facility today. What are you thinking if you're a guy like Max Crosby who still has so much room to grow himself?
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure you're excited to kind of help out the younger guys, to get some guys behind you. It's what it really means is that if he does work out the way that you hope, it takes a lot of pressure off you because you have some offensive line attention on the other side of the ball, and you also have some reps that you can probably take off and stay fresher by having a running mate out there that's taking up some of the slack, and you can play less plays and be more effective on those plays. I think that's part of what you're probably looking at. But I think you're very excited just in general about investing on the defensive side. I think one thing he's probably not thrilled about, I know he has a friend out of Eastern Michigan and Jose Ramirez that he loves and really wanted them to take. And if you've already taken 2 guys on the defensive line, maybe there's a less chance that happens later on in the draft, but plenty of picks remaining. Maybe he can lobby and talk them into it. Dave Ziegler talked about that last week, saying, look, I've heard from pretty much everybody, including my 7-year-old son, about who we should be taking.
The son wanted defense, and that's what he got. So I don't know if the 7-year-old was in control here behind the sines.
He got it, for sure.
Yeah.
That's what he was asking for, and that's what he got. So maybe he had some influence, maybe more than Max Crosby had. But I think all the defensive guys are going to be excited. The defensive backfield is certainly going to be excited about potentially adding, more of a pass rush, more of an ability to get to the quarterback and have them have less time in the pocket. That's less time that you have to cover. So I think everybody on that side of the ball is going to be excited, and certainly the offense can look at it and say, hey, look, if the defense is better and picks it up, there's not as much pressure on us to score a whole lot of points to win games. So there's a lot to like, I think, about that. Look, the last 2 picks, I know a lot of people would say probably too early for those picks, but you're at the point of the draft now where you're targeting guys that you really like, that you are really comfortable with, that you bonded with, that you felt a connection with, and hopefully guys that felt the same way about you, and you're bringing them in and really doing a good job of finding that connection, even more so than just what the guy did at the combine or necessarily even what they did on film. It's guys that fit with you. And I think that's an important part of building a roster and building a team. And you're seeing that from Dave Ziegler and Josh McDaniels right now, and then their entire staff of, looking around and who fits best with us, who goes well in this locker room. We saw them kind of move on from a lot of guys that were here before they were here,
right.
Because you would say, well, that guy's a really good player. What's going on? Well, maybe he's not a scheme fit. Maybe he's not a personality fit. So now you are rebuilding the roster in your image and how you want it to look. And I know some fans have been upset about that and saying that's not what we want here. But I think what the fans really want in the end is winning, and
right.
that's really all that's going to matter. It's to them. I think they'll forget about some of the guys that they lost if it translates to wins on the field.
I think fans would really love maybe another interception or two this season, another maybe just turnovers, right? Turnovers. So when you talk about this Raiders secondary, and you've got guys like Nate Hobbs, obviously, who suffered from injury this year. Amik Robertson, we saw come to life a little bit this past season. How great would it be for this Raiders team to get just another monster on the secondary for this team?
Well, I mean, you're reminding me once again that Devin Witherspoon wasn't available with the 7th pick in the first round, who I was very much looking forward to covering.
I had all the pictures ready of him, too, Adam.
It would have been,
so
been great. And Seattle had to ruin everybody's fun. But, I mean, a guy like that is a game-changing type player, and you can still find guys. I mean, just because they're not picked in the first round doesn't mean that you're not going to be able to find guys like that at some point in the draft. So I would look for them to absolutely address that. I wouldn't be surprised if they got 2 corners and maybe even 2 corners and a safety if they invest more than 1 or 2 picks in the secondary, because they do need bodies. They do need more talent. They need depth. Even if you bring in guys just for competition to get these other guys, fired up for it, I think that is something to watch for.
Oh, it looks like we've got some movement here in Henderson. General Manager Dave Ziegler walking in with a
casual
big
Dave.
Smile. Casual Dave with the white tee. So let's go ahead and toss things out now to Henderson, Nevada for more from General Manager Dave Ziegler.
All right, we'll get started with your questions.
Dave, I'd like to talk to you about Byron Young. This is a guy that is a beast in the rushing defense. He's a space eater, eats up blocks, with an upside to become a very good pass rusher. Will you just talk about where you selected him, what you saw that slotted him there, please?
Yeah, big physical kid, long arms. He does a really nice job of being able to create leverage inside and control running lanes. It's a little bit of early down pass rush too right now. I think he can develop more than that, but he has some first step quickness, and because of his length, it makes it hard for a lot of those guards to handle him inside. So we see him being able to play inside. We also see him being able to bump out and play big end for us in some of our different defensive packages. So saw him as a versatile guy on early downs that can, right now that can play inside, that can also move outside and play big end, has some pass rush ability, also foundation traits. Hard worker, smart, tough, dependable, loves football. A lot of the traits that we're looking for, and a kind of a self-made guy. So, really excited to be able to get him, have some of his versatility. Brings another level of competition too on the inside of our, both inside and at the defensive end position for us.
You had talked about tight ends being a deep group at the combine. Michael Mayer was somebody that a lot of people thought about as a first rounder.
Yeah.
When did you start tracking him and kind of like keeping an eye on that to maybe go up and go get him?
Yeah, well, when we got to the end of the first round, there were some discussions there about possibly moving back into the first round, and he was one of the guys that we had discussions about in that mold, and ultimately decided that we that wasn't didn't come to fruition, and didn't kind of work out that way. So talked about it a lot last night, talked about it a lot today. And the fact that he was still there was a very exciting moment for us. He's one of the top 15 players on our board just in totality. So to be able to get a guy like Michael, a tight end, good size, really unique thing about him, I'd say, is his short area quickness. He's a bigger guy, but he still has, when you watch the tape, he has the ability to win in a short area. He can win on third down, use his size down in the red zone. Obviously has some size to continue to develop as a run blocker. Another kid. Excellent traits, very smart. One of the, probably in terms of our scale of traits, one of the highest guys on our board in that regard too, the way we kind of measure that. So really excited to be able to get a young tight end with his skill set where we got him. We felt like that was very good value.
To piggyback on that, with trading Darren and the unfortunate situation with Foster, you need someone to step in like that. And that's a position where with this team, with the skill set positions, players that you have, Devontae, right?
Sure.
Is he someone who can make an immediate impact and sort of just meld right into the system and become a star because of his work ethic and his capabilities?
Yeah, I mean, I think, as you know, like when I talk about rookies, all of them are going to have to come in and earn their role. And there's a lot of transitions that go on in doing that. But his skill set, I mean, he has a skill set to come in and make an impact, for us in year one. And yeah, how far that goes, I'm not going to put any expectations on him to say he's going to be this or that, but definitely feel like he can come in and make an impact for us in the passing game. We signed a couple. We signed Austin. We signed OJ to one-year deals in the offseason. Obviously, Michael's going to be here for a long time, from a contractual standpoint. But high ceiling for him if he continues to grow and learn the nuances of the game. You're going to see some different coverages and some different matchups than you see in the college game, but has a very good skill set to make an impact for us.
Speaking of some of those shared traits, I think all three guys you took tonight have been in some really big games. I think they were all in college football playoff games. I'm sure there's a lot of coincidence there, but does that mean something when you're looking at film and you see a guy really pop, not only in just some random game, but in some of these big moments?
Yeah, I think being able to, perform in big games, also against another, I'd say, high-level competition. Obviously, playing it like Byron playing in the SEC. He gets a lot of that week in and week out, but also playing in big bowl games and things of that nature. Seeing guys perform, I'd say, at a high level in some of the bigger moments that they get to experience at the college level definitely has an impact. And the thing about college football is you try to see how players perform against the top level competition that they face. And, some guys, depending on the conference, that works differently, but that's where we really look at and see how that stands out. And for some guys, it's at the Senior Bowl or the East-West game or one of these other all-star games that you get to see some of those matchups. But all those instances when we're able to see these guys play against other top level competition, it does, it holds some weight, when you're going through the evaluation process.
What's your initial vision for Trey Tucker?
Yeah. Trey has a lot of speed, and so he has a lot of, I'd say, versatility offensively, just in terms of both as a receiver that, can play the receiver position. There's also, because of his speed, a gadget element to him that he can be used in getting him the ball in space and things of that nature, whether, there's a lot of ways that we've seen that done in the league, whether it's speed sweeps, whether it's in the screen game. But we really, have studied him a lot, and just as a receiver, think he has the ability to win. He's a tough matchup because of his short area quickness and just his straight line speed. He had a lot of explosive plays. Beyond that, which is unique about him, was his production as a gunner. And his production as a kick coverage player in the kicking game too, where he had a lot of production in that way, and then also in the return game. And so, again, he's going to add a lot of competition to that group. We added some guys, in free agency that have some of those skill sets. Again, some of those, obviously this when you draft a player contractually, you have them longer than a year. So, he's going to have some time to develop, but we think he's going to come in and compete right away, and just love the speed and explosiveness that he brings in, both as an offensive player, both as a returner, and then also his ability to cover in the kicking game too.
Congratulations on the draft picks. Sticking with Trey Tucker, how hard is it of evaluation when you have a guy who's like 5'9", 180 pounds, and you try and see his versatility in the return game and also being able to dual threat as a wide receiver?
Yeah, I think when you're looking at guys that are maybe shorter in stature, the thing that comes to my mind when I think of Trey is that he plays bigger than his size. Trey was also a high school wrestler in my hometown area of Akron, Ohio. So he always would kind of going back and just looking at his background from high school all the way through college, always had an edge, always had a chip on his shoulder, always played bigger than his size. And I think you saw that on film. You saw it as a gunner. So those are the types of things you're looking for. Do they play bigger than their size? Do they play with a certain amount of physicality and edge to them? And we felt Trey did that, and so felt really good about, selecting him when we did.
Dave, I know each draft plays out differently, but you haven't addressed anything with the secondary just yet.
Yeah.
Do you still feel like there's some mining to do in that group?
Yeah, and there's still some players in that area that we like. And again, the draft obviously falls in different ways, in different directions. And we knew once we worked through the draft that there was going to be some areas that, you're going to have some areas that you're going to still want to fill or still want to grow. And whether that's through the draft, through college free agency, or beyond. But yeah, I think we still see some good players that are there in the secondary, and we'll obviously have to see how the board falls, and see what happens in that direction.
I know you're locked in on the draft right now, but there are still veteran free agents out there. Specifically at cornerback, could that be maybe something that a guy like Rocky Sin, who played with the Raiders last year, that you traded for and viewed last year, could somebody like that be somebody you explore bringing in?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, but I'm not going to speak specifically to Rock, but I think just in general, whether it ends up being the free agent market, whether it ends up being the trade market, whether it ends up going down even farther down the list there, prior to the cut down to 53. I mean, there's going to be some other opportunities for us to add players. Like you mentioned, there's still some quality players out there that have been productive NFL players. And I think that's once we get through the draft, we'll kind of reassess where we are as a team, reassess what those markets are, and see kind of how those puzzle pieces fit together. And if they make sense, then they make sense for us.
You mentioned building from the front back, winning the point of attack, being explosive. Do you feel like those first 3 picks addresses that, even with Michael Mayer as a physical force at the line of scrimmage?
Yeah, and I think Michael, yes, and I think there's a little bit different element to all 3 of those guys. Obviously, Tyree, has an explosive pass rush ability. Also, he can be very disruptive in the run game. Michael is a guy that's shown the ability to be a tough matchup on third down, be able to win on third down, be able to win in the red zone, which are obviously critical plays in a football game. And Byron, just with his length and power, his explosive ability to reset the line of scrimmage in the run game. And also uses length and leverage to disrupt the pocket. And so we feel with those 3 guys, and then, Trey brings an explosive element in the areas that I mentioned that, he's had a lot of success in. So, still have work to do, but feel good about, what we were able to do so far.
Dave, you were very emphatic about each team has its own board and how that player relates. So I'm curious, when you look at all the guys you've selected so far, have you been able to do well getting guys that maybe you had higher on your boards a little bit later?
Yeah, I think we have. I think, I'm not going to get into the specifics of how we had each individual guy ranked, but yeah, we felt like, we were able to get good value with the picks based on where those players were on the board. Now we're getting into, obviously, day 3. The board's a little bit more picked over. It's not as robust as it was, to start the day. And so, now we're looking for, very, I'd say a little bit more of the diamond in the rough element, right? Or a little bit more of maybe taking some guys that have more upside and some potential. Maybe it wasn't, manifested itself in a perfect way on tape consistently. But those are some of the types of guys that are, still available in the draft. And so, we're excited about the value that we're able to get. And we'll see, we'll have to put in some good work here tomorrow too.
Hey, within those types of guys that, come on the last day, you're obviously going to be looking at best players available where it fits, but is there anywhere specific that you're hoping to fill needs early on and with the first few picks? Are there still positions that you want to answer some questions?
Yeah, there's definitely some areas that we still want to address. I mean, I don't want to get into the specifics of it because then other teams that maybe have those ideas and all of a sudden they're trading in front of us and from a strategic standpoint. But yeah, there's still a few key areas on the team that we want to try to continue to address as we head into the last day.
Let's do 3 more. We'll go Vinny, Vic, and then Paul.
You look at the game logs of the players that you guys have drafted. There's a ton of games.
Yeah.
On that docket. Is that important to you, and especially from just the physicality of football, being able to be available and be out there and play?
Yeah, that's part of the process when we go through evaluating each individual player. Now, some players you're gonna take maybe a greater risk on based on the talent and things like that. Maybe a guy that's had an injury or two of something of that nature. But yeah, availability. Is very valuable, and durability is very valuable. And so that's another piece of the puzzle that we look at when we're evaluating each individual player. And then, again, like I mentioned, you have to kind of look at the risk-reward of, what the talent is of that player, what the injuries have been, and that all goes into the equation when you're looking at, each individual player.
The Senior Bowl is obviously a resource. You have Patrick Graham there.
Yeah.
You got two guys, and Young and Tucker. What were Patrick's thoughts on these guys? I'm sure he was high on them, and what was he saying to you guys about them?
Yeah, that was a big part of the process for us, and it was really valuable. Pat was able to, and Matt Edwards, one of our defensive line coaches, was also there helping out on staff, and so we were able to get a lot of intel from them, a lot of the character, the background, the classroom stuff, and I think one thing that stood out on both of those guys was just their professional demeanor, their passion for football, their ability to learn. So not a lot, I would say, a lot of maintenance, that comes into some of the extra stuff that's beyond the field stuff with those guys, because you can't learn that unless you're there coaching, like how they prepared, how they handled themselves, how they interacted with their coaches, how they took instruction. And both of those guys really excelled in those two areas at the Senior Bowl. And then again, we were able to watch a lot of the Senior Bowl practices and tape, and so we were able to kind of collab on what that looked like. And we felt both of those guys had good performances down there, but the most valuable stuff was the stuff that we couldn't see at practice, which was behind the scenes, and both of those guys excelled in those two areas.
Dave, when it comes to Trey, how unique is it for a receiver to utilize what he learned in wrestling on the football field?
It's unique, and I think what he's learned in that regard. And again, I think there's just wrestling. There's a level of toughness that you have to be a wrestler. And I think that's one thing that Trey has, to, as I mentioned, to his kind of, he's a smaller guy, but he plays bigger and he plays with an edge. And I think a lot of that toughness comes from wrestling. He also has very good balance and agility when you watch him. And if you've watched any good wrestlers, that's one thing that they're able to do is play with leverage, have agility, have balance. And I think so. It's a unique thing for a receiver. You don't often see those two things attached, but wrestling in Akron, Ohio, and Talmadge, Ohio, where I'm from, that's a big sport back there, and so unique for him, and you see it in his in a lot of the areas where he plays, especially in the kicking game.
All right, thank you, Dave. Thanks, everyone.
All right, thank you. Blowing up my phone.
Well, that was Raiders GM Dave Ziegler wrapping up day 2 there. And just again, once again, looking at the Raiders day 2 draft picks, at that number 35 pick, they went ahead and moved up from 38 to 35 to draft Michael Mayer, tight end. Number 70, Byron Young. Number 100, Trey Tucker. Just your overall thoughts on how Dave Ziegler felt, just casual Dave we saw. What do you think he was feeling after day 2? Adam?
Alabama, Byron Young.
Alabama, not
yes,
Tennessee. Yes. I should add that in
Not
there.
the one we had everything prepared for. The other one was drafted there. Look, I think one of the things you hear from him is that they're happy with where they are right now. They're happy with the players they've acquired. They've addressed some needs on the team that they wanted to address, but there's plenty more to do, and they've got those 7 picks to do it. So I know that there's areas that they want to address. He didn't want to get into specifics because he said, look, I don't want to tell the teams around us what we want, and then they'll trade ahead of us.
Doesn't he know all the teams are watching the Review Journal YouTube page right now, watching this live stream?
I think he just assumed that they were. Yeah,
Yes.
That's why he said it. So he knows that there's areas. Offensive line, of course. Look, he doesn't have to say it. We know. Offensive line, maybe. Defensive backs, definitely. Linebacker, definitely. And interior of the defensive line, most likely as well. So we know those areas that he's talking about. He just doesn't want to be specific. But he understands there's plenty of capital left. There's plenty of work left to do. That's what they're going to do tomorrow. And they've got the picks to do. As we said, they've got 7. If they want to use 1 or 2 of them to move up, to target certain guys, they'll certainly do that because they had 12 to start. They've got 11 now. That's way too many guys to add to a roster through the draft for the most part. So I think you can use those picks very, very judiciously to kind of move up and target spots that you want. But they also need a ton of talent and a ton of depth added to this roster. So that's what they're doing right now.
Yeah, maybe they'll find their gem there in that 5th round, 6th round. Again, looking
He
at
said
their
diamond in the rough. He mentioned it exactly. That is what you're looking for right now because you're not going to get those elite prospects. If they're a perfect prospect, they've been picked already. So you're looking at those guys that, hey, there's this one trait. We talked about with Trey, a lot of speed.
Yeah.
Let's find that guy. Maybe that develops into something. If you find that one elite trait, that's what you're looking for right now, a guy that can develop with that one thing into something great.
And I mean, I don't think we can reference it enough that Max Crosby is the perfect example of a day 3 guy just becoming the face of your franchise.
I think he's been pretty good. I think they did a good job of finding him. He was
Pro Bowl or 2.
A diamond in the rough for sure. So that's what they found, and that's what they're looking for.
Right. Well, we will be back here on day 3, wrapping up the 2023 NFL Draft tomorrow on Saturday. So be sure to join us once again, wrapping up day 2 here. Adam Hill, Cassie Soto. Soto. Thank you so much for tuning in. Everything you need to wrap up this year's draft at vegasnation.com. We'll see you tomorrow.
You've been watching breaking news from the Las Vegas Review-Journal, sponsored by Michael Gaughan's South Point Hotel, Casino, and Spa.